the storm came without warning. It was as if the sky had suddenly ripped open, and everything that had once been solid and sure in the world was now bending to the will of something far darker. At first, it had seemed like just another summer thunderstorm, a few dark clouds rolling in, a flash of lightning, the rumble of thunder in the distance. But then, as quickly as it had arrived, the storm grew unnaturally violent. Winds howled like a chorus of angry spirits, shaking trees and rattling windows. Rain pounded down in sheets, making it impossible to see more than a few feet beyond the porch. The air felt charged, heavy with the promise of something more than just bad weather. And then, the power went out. The city of Woodridge, a small, quiet town nestled between dense forests and rolling hills, was plunged into darkness. No street lights. No lights from the homes or shops. No hum of electricity. No glow of neon signs or flicker of television screens. The storm had knocked out the power grid, and it was clear that no one was going anywhere for a while. The sudden stillness that followed the storm's fury was unnerving, a kind of silence that was too complete, too unnatural. In the McAllister household, the power failure was just the beginning of a long night. "Great," Jennifer McAllister muttered, staring out the kitchen window as the wind howled. Of course, it would happen on the worst night possible. Her husband, Aaron, was rummaging through the kitchen drawer for candles and flashlights. Their two children, Ella and Max, had already retreated to the living room, huddled under blankets. They were used to the occasional power outage, but this storm was different. The wind sounded too violent, the rain too heavy, and the darkness felt wrong. "Mom, is everything okay?" Max's voice was soft, filled with a mix of curiosity and fear. He was only 8, and he didn't like storms. "I think it's just the storm, honey. We'll be fine," Jennifer said, trying to sound reassuring, though she didn't feel it. The wind picked up again, rattling the windows. A distant crash of thunder shook the house. Then, as if on cue, the front doorbell rang. Aaron frowned. Who in the world could that be? "It's past 10 o'clock. Jennifer's heart skipped a beat. "Don't open it," she said softly, a sudden chill crawling down her spine. The storm outside had grown worse in the last few minutes, and the last thing she wanted was some stranger standing on their doorstep in this madness. But Aaron's curiosity got the better of him. "It's probably just one of the neighbors. I'll go check." He opened the door, and a gust of wind immediately blew the storm inside, causing the candle flames to flicker. Standing on the porch were two figures, soaked to the bone, drenched by the pouring rain. "Are you okay?" Aaron asked, squinting in the dim light. It was Mrs. Turner, the elderly woman who lived 2 doors down, and her daughter, Rachel. They both looked frantic, their eyes wide with fear. We didn't know where else to go," Rachel said, her voice trembling. "The storm, it's getting worse, and we can't see anything. No lights. We thought maybe you could." "You're welcome to come in," Aaron said, stepping aside to let them in, though he felt a lingering unease settle in his stomach. Once they were inside, Jennifer quickly closed the door, locking it behind them. The air in the house was still, too still, and the distant sounds of the storm outside now felt muffled, as if the house had become a bubble, cut off from the world. "Thank you," Mrs. Turner whispered, her voice wavering. "I don't know what's happening. The storm. It's not like any other storm I've ever seen." Rachel nodded, her face pale. "We saw something outside, in the woods. It was moving, but it wasn't just the wind. It followed us." Aaron and Jennifer exchanged a glance. There was a chill in the room now, and it wasn't just from the storm. "Are you sure?" Aaron asked, his voice low. Mrs. Turner's hands trembled as she clutched her daughter's arm. "There was something in the woods," she repeated, more forcefully now. "And it wasn't right. We saw it moving through the trees. It wasn't the wind, it was something else. Something watching us." The room fell silent. The storm outside grew more intense, the sound of the rain now a constant roar against the house, but the strange silence in the room pressed in tighter. "We should stay together," Jennifer said, her voice trembling. "We'll be safer in here. We've got enough food and water for the night. We'll wait for the storm to pass, and everything will be fine." But the unease wouldn't leave. The stillness in the air seemed to intensify with every passing second. There was something lurking in the corners of the house, something just beyond the threshold of their understanding. Then, just as they were starting to settle down, the first whisper came. It was a faint, breathy sound, like wind brushing past the house, but it wasn't the wind. No, it was a voice. Jennifer's heart froze. She could feel the hairs on the back of her neck rise. She turned toward the source of the sound, a corner of the living room where the shadows had started to twist unnaturally. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, another whisper filled the room. This time it was clearer, more distinct. "You shouldn't be here." Her breath caught in her throat, and she spun toward Aaron, who had also heard it. His face was pale, his eyes wide with fear. Who said that?" he asked, his voice shaky. I don't know," Jennifer stammered, her pulse racing. Another whisper echoed, this time from the direction of the front door. "They're here. They're coming." The words made no sense, but the fear in their voices was undeniable. Rachel's eyes darted around the room, her face stricken with terror. "We need to leave," she whispered urgently. "We need to get out of here now." But Jennifer shook her head, panic rising in her chest. "No. The storm. It's too dangerous outside." Before anyone could react, the whispers grew louder, more urgent. They came from all around them now, filling the house with an oppressive, suffocating presence. "Help us. Let us in. It's too late." Suddenly, the lights flickered, then went out completely. The house was plunged into total darkness. The whispering didn't stop. If anything, it grew louder. Max started crying. "Mom, Dad." His voice was high-pitched with fear. Jennifer grabbed his hand, her own voice cracking as she tried to reassure him. "It's okay, sweetheart. Everything's going to be fine." But even as she spoke, the whispers began to grow more distinct, more insistent. The voices were no longer just outside. They were inside the house. Something was moving outside. She could hear the scraping of nails against the door, like something trying to claw its way in. The darkened house felt smaller, tighter, as if the walls were closing in on them. Then they heard a heavy thud, followed by a loud crack, as though something large and heavy had collided with the door. The whole house seemed to shudder with the impact. The voices grew louder, now shouting, screaming, from the shadows. "We've been waiting for you." Suddenly, a cold, unnatural wind blew through the room, sending the curtains billowing out wildly, though the windows were tightly shut. The temperature plummeted, and then the thing at the door made itself known. A low, guttural growl emanated from the other side, followed by the sound of claws scraping across the wood. The door creaked under pressure, as if something massive was pressing against it, trying to break through. Max screamed, and Jennifer clutched him to her chest, her heart racing in her throat. "We can't stay here," Aaron said, his voice desperate. "We have to run." But as they all stood there, paralyzed by fear, they realized it wasn't the storm they needed to be afraid of. The storm had come for them, and the blackout wasn't a power outage. It was a cover for something much darker, something that had been waiting, hiding in the shadows for just this moment. And now it was inside. The whispers continued, rising into an incoherent, maddening roar. And then the door broke.